better. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Got some good news. Got some great news. As Greg said a few weeks ago, I stood up here and I shared a testimony. But I'm going to start with a verse first, actually. And the verse is John chapter 8, 31 to 36. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you really are my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." So, if you were here a few weeks ago and you've already heard the testimony, feel free to zone out for a few minutes. I'm going to share it again. I have battled with rejection all of my life. Even as a young kid, even as a very young child, I remember feeling the pain of rejection. I felt like there was something broken inside of me. That's what it felt like. It felt like there was some fundamental flaw in my being. Like I was different from everyone else. I was always on the outside. That's what it felt like. It wasn't until I got older that I was able to identify that as rejection. And it wasn't until I learnt about prayer ministry that I was able to actually start, dealing with it. But what would happen would be that, something would happen. Someone would say something, a circumstance would occur. Sometimes it would be the most insignificant thing. It would be, I would arrive somewhere and there'd be not enough seats for me. Or someone would hand something out and there wouldn't be enough and so I would miss out. Just really insignificant things, but they would trigger something in me. They would trigger these feelings of rejection. And so what I would do is I'd go away and I'd pray through it and, I'd deal with unforgiveness and I would receive healing and I was always able to move on from that. But it wouldn't be long, maybe a few months, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few days, and something else would happen. Be a different situation, different people, different circumstances, but it was rejection. It always came back to rejection. And this went on for years of dealing with it, and dealing with it, and dealing with it, and dealing with it, and then dealing with it. And about 6 weeks ago, I think it was now, one Sunday 6 weeks ago, all of that changed. Now leading up to this Sunday, I had, probably from the beginning of this year, I had some really big things happen in my life which had massively triggered this rejection in me. And so I was in the middle of dealing with all of that and really feeling the pain of it, but I was also starting to get a little bit fed up. Like I was getting quite angry almost with God and really questioning, like, God, why does this keep coming up? And why is it always rejection? And why do you keep asking me to step out and put myself out there and do things that make me vulnerable when you know that it's going to hurt me? And so that's where I was at when I came to church that Sunday. And as I was sitting down the back there, the prophetic words started coming and they just began to hit me. And I really felt the truth of them. And I just began to cry. And then I started getting really agitated. And it was like I just couldn't handle the truth. I'd been in that situation before. It was like I just couldn't handle it. It was too much. And I nearly left the service at that point. But my husband made me stay. And I'm so glad that he did, because Greg's message was what I needed to hear. It pushed me into a place where I was ripe for a breakthrough. But it wasn't a pretty place to be. I was crying all through the service. After the service, I was crying. We drove home. I was still crying. We got home. My husband was making lunch for the kids. I was still crying. They went out for a walk. I was still crying. In the end, I just had to go into my bedroom and shut the door. I was like, what is going on, God? What is going on? What it felt like a lid had been ripped off my heart, and that underneath was just all this seething pain and rejection. It was like it was just all right there on the surface, and I just, the emotion of it was just so overwhelming. Normally I'm pretty good at stepping back from situations and looking at it from a purely analytical perspective and say, oh, that's interesting, Rachel. Why did you respond like that? Why did that happen? And figuring it out myself. I couldn't do that this time. I was just so overwhelmed by the emotion. I couldn't even form a coherent prayer in my head. All I felt like I could do was just cry out to God. But actually, that's what He wanted me to do. And looking back, I can see that He was deliberately pushing my buttons. He was deliberately pushing me into that place of desperation. Not just that Sunday, but all that time leading up to this point, God had been pushing me into that place where all I could do was cry out to Him. And I felt like that's what He was wanting. He was wanting me to just cry out. And so I did. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just opened my mouth and I just said, God, I am so sick of carrying the weight of this rejection for my entire life. And in that moment, He spoke. He said, so put it down. 4 simple words. But man, they changed everything. They changed everything. Because with them came revelation. All of a sudden, it's like my eyes were open and I understood that I had been carrying a spirit of rejection. And that I think there was a fear of rejection alongside there as well. And that I had the authority to deal with that. And so I did. I did what I'd been taught to do. I repented. I prayed off the authority that this rejection had over me and over my life, and I put it down. I actually just put my arms down like this, and I just felt the weight of it just dropped off me. And it was the most incredible experience I've had in my life. Like, I have seen God do some pretty cool stuff, but man, this one just took the cake. It was like I'd been in the darkness and then all of a sudden the light came on. It was like I'd been in black and white and then all of a sudden I could see colour. It was like I'd been in chains my whole life and I hadn't even realised it until all of a sudden I was set free. God is good. Man, He is good. He is good. Yeah. Sorry. I thank Him every day for what He's done for me. I thank Him every day. You know, like, I've found that pearl of great price. You know, and it is freedom. It is freedom in the name of Jesus Christ. And it's for all of us. It's for everyone. But this whole experience really got me thinking about rejection and wondering how many other people are carrying that in their own lives. And we all experience hurt. You know, that's the human condition. We all experience hurt at some point in our lives. But most hurts that we receive are to do with our feelings. They cause us emotional pain. But I really do believe that rejection is different. I think rejection goes deeper than our emotions. It goes deeper even than our physical consciousness at times. I've heard it described as a wound to our spirit. And I think that's a pretty apt description. Because God created us to be in relationship with Him. You know, we are spiritual beings who have been designed to love and to be loved. And so rejection is like the worst kind of torment we could endure. Rejection comes against our very purpose for existence. And I do wonder if that is what hell is. Don't worry, I know it's a family service. Won't go too much into that. But you know, hell, I wonder, is the torment of it to be separated from God? To see the face of our Creator, to look at Him and see Him, and then to be rejected by Him. And if that's the case, then to carry rejection as a wound to our spirit, you could liken it to carrying a little bit of the torment of hell. It's a terrible thing to bear. But most people carry it. Most people carry rejection to some extent. Often we pick it up as children. Greg shared a few weeks ago about how sometimes we can even pick it up in the womb. And we are born into a spirit of rejection. And in that case, you don't know life any other way. Rejection sits so deeply inside of us that often we don't even see it in ourselves. We can't identify it. It becomes part of who we are. We assimilate it into our personalities even. You know, we might say, I'm an introverted person. I'm a shy person. I'm a sensitive person. And those can be legitimate personality traits, but they can also be the fruit of rejection. And I know for myself, lots of things that I believed were just part of me, part of my personality. Actually, it was the rejection in me. And who would know how much our personalities are being distorted by the things that we carry? We just don't know. We just don't know. It can manifest as a lot of different things in our lives. I sat down the other day and I made a list of things, the ways in which it can manifest. And this is not a completely comprehensive, correct list. This is just my thinking about and my experience of it. So fear of man, that is or can be rejection. Social anxiety, rejection. Jealousy, bear with me on this one. See, my thinking is that often jealousy can stem from a belief that who we are and what we have isn't good enough. Feeling unwanted, feeling like we're not good enough, we're worthless, there's something wrong with us. We're on the outside, we're excluded. Nobody cares, no one will ever care. Rebellion and anger. There are a lot of children out there in New Zealand who are very angry because they've experienced rejection by one or both of their parents. Especially if they're in the system, if they've been passed from foster home to foster home, they're carrying a huge amount of rejection, and it manifests as anger and rebellion and violence. Loneliness. That was a big one for me. That was a huge one, actually. That was a huge one. How many of you here this morning can go out or come to church even and smile and chat and then go home and just feel so low? It used to happen to me all the time. All the time. I used to dread social occasions. I had this love-hate relationship with them because I'd enjoy them at the time. But after everyone had gone, or after I got home, I just felt so low. Like I was just so empty inside. And I could never figure out what it was. I didn't have a clue why I felt that way. I knew that it happened, but I didn't know how to fix it. But looking back, I can see that actually it was loneliness. And what was happening was that my spirit was hungering for fellowship. And I'd be seeing it happening all around me. Sorry. I'd be seeing it happening all around me. But I just couldn't get across the line myself. Just as well I didn't wearing this scar this morning. I thought that I was. I thought that I had good relationships. I thought that I had good connections with people. But actually, looking back, I can see that I was always holding a part of myself in reserve. I was like putting barriers up. I wasn't allowing myself to feel the joy of friendship and of fellowship. It was like showing a starving man food and not allowing him to eat it. It only intensifies that hunger. So it was only these social occasions only intensified my hunger for fellowship. They only highlighted what I was lacking in myself. That's loneliness. See, rejection, whether we realise it or not, rejection stops us from seeking and finding connection with other people. It stops us from having meaningful relationships with people. It stops us from functioning and belonging as part of a church family. It says in 1 Peter that, I think it says, the enemy's like a roaring lion, roaming backwards and forwards looking for someone to devour. When you carry rejection, you are that someone. You make easy prey. He wants you to believe that you are alone. He wants you to believe that you are unloved. He wants you to believe that you are unlovable. Because when you believe those things and you walk in them, you make them your reality, just like I was. We are, what happens is someone might say something or do something that hurts me. And so I respond. I withdraw, I get angry, not realising that likely the other person is also carrying rejection and that my response has triggered something in me. And so contention springs up, offence springs up, division. Neither of us realising that actually it's not the other person that's caused us pain, it's the rejection that's in us. That's what's caused us pain. We're blind to how it shapes every area of our lives. We are blind to how it impacts on our relationships, on the decisions that we make. We're like the Jews with Jesus. How can we be set free? We've never been enslaved. That's why we need the truth. The truth will set us free. You might think that, you come to church and you worship and you're involved and you've got good relationships with people, you've got a good relationship with God. Often we don't see the chains until we step away from it. But I have good news for you. Because it doesn't matter what's happened in your life. And it doesn't matter what you're carrying. Whether it be rejection or whether it be something else. Jesus has made a way. He has made a way. He has made a way for us to pass from pain and suffering into freedom. He knew what it was like to be rejected. He was the most rejected man on the planet. He still is. He was rejected by man and he was rejected by God. I was actually reading something about this a few months ago. To be honest, I've never really considered it in this light. But when Jesus hung on the cross, he became sin. He became everything that is vile and disgraceful and disgusting to God. And God turned away. His final words before he died were, my God, why have you forsaken me? He experienced the ultimate rejection. And we cannot comprehend what it would have been like to have been together with his Father since the beginning, bound in the most perfect harmony and unity, to have in that moment experienced complete and total separation, it would have been terrible. But he did it. He did it for us. He did it for you. He took everything upon himself, even rejection. He took it and he carried it so that we could be set free of it. His death on the cross is our victory, because through the cross we receive complete and unconditional acceptance by God. We receive the spirit of adoption. You have received the spirit of adoption. He has chosen you. Don't you see? He has chosen you. It's not by chance that you're here this morning. He has set you apart for himself. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, he knew you. As your frame was being knit together, he was singing over you in delight. Before you'd taken your first breath, all of your days had already been written in his book. In the highs and in the lows and in the joy and the despair of your life, he has surrounded you. His hand has been upon you. He knows your innermost thoughts, your deepest fears, your deepest desires. When you turn to the side, he goes after you. When you falter and fall, his hand lifts you up. When you are weary, he is your strength. When you face troubles, he is your shield. He goes before you and he stands behind you. Your tears are his tears. Your victories are his victories. His love for you is relentless. See, he has called you. He has called you by your name, and he will never stop pursuing you. You are not rejected. You do not have to live under rejection. Jesus has already done the hard part. He has already suffered and died so that you could be set free. Don't spurn that gift. Don't spurn that pearl of great price. For there is healing for those who seek him. It's just a matter of how far are you willing to go? What is it worth to you? Will you sell your every earthly possession? Will you let go of your fear, your shame, your pride? Will you die in order to obtain that treasure? Will you allow him to push you into that place of desperation, into that place where all you can do is just cry out to him? So if he's calling you to his altar this morning, that I would encourage you, just obey. Just obey. Because when we're not in obedience, then we're in sin. And when we're in sin, then we're serving the wrong master. We've got to choose. We have to make that call. Who are we going to serve? Are we going to be a slave to sin and shame and fear? Or will we allow the Son to set us free? The difference in me is I can't explain it. It's too all-consuming. You know, when I would stand up here in times gone by, I may not have come across as it, but I was incredibly nervous. I'd have the shakes. I'd sometimes be physically ill. Sometimes I'd lie awake the night before, just the whole night. And now I just feel like there's so much freedom. There is so much freedom. You know, like those inhibitions are gone. And I'm not perfect. I've still got a lot of work to do. But I just feel like, you know, it's not just for me. This is not just for me, this is for you. And that's why I wanted to share it with you this morning. This is for you too. He is a good, good Father. And he will not leave us in that place. All we've got to do is be willing to step forward and say, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Have your way. Have your way. Whatever that looks like, however messy that gets, Father, have your way in me. Nice and early, Greg. I just wanted to finish on a quote. It's from a book called The Wilderness, which Rebecca Griffiths lent to me. Thank you, Rebecca. It says, the best place to be is not the easy place, but the place where we yield to Christ. That is the place where you'll receive your breakthrough. So I would just encourage you this morning, just yield to Him. Yield to Him because He is faithful. He is faithful.